So over the years, as a filmmaker and editor, I've had to learn how to make a bunch of different effects and motion graphics for various projects. And even though at this point I know how to do that stuff, I really hate it anytime I have to. That's why over the past few months, I've started using some DaVinci Resolve plugins that end up saving me a lot of time and effort anytime when I'm editing. And in this video, we're going to talk about what those plugins are, as well as why I like them. Some of these are going to cost money, but we're also talking about a few completely free and still really awesome plugins, so even if you're somebody that's on a really tight budget, you might want to stick around until a bit later in the video. Also, this video is not sponsored by anyone, but I did get some of these plugins for free to try out and see what I think, and I do have affiliate links for some of them. That being said, nobody gets to tell me what to say, and I'm not here to try to sell you any of these. The only reason that I'm even talking about them in the first place is because I genuinely think that they can be useful to some people, and I actually see myself using them in the long run, so I feel like I can recommend them. But if you don't trust me, or if you just really dislike me for whatever reason, you can go and find somebody else's links to use, or you can just Google these for yourself and get them that way. So the first plugin we're talking about is called MTutorial from Motion VFX. Some of you might have noticed that recently I've been using a bit more motion graphics in some of my videos, and this is where all of them are from. It's basically a pack that's full of a bunch of awesome motion graphics assets, stuff like typography, arrows, focus boxes, button combinations, and a lot more. I'm not going to go through and show you absolutely everything that's in here because there's just way too much, but if you're interested, you can go to Motion VFX's site, and under the page for MTutorial, there's previews for each of the individual elements that you can click on and kind of see what they look like. And even though it's called MTutorial, if you get creative with it, you can use this for pretty much any other type of project as well. The reason I like this plugin is because anytime when I'm making a tutorial or a guide, I can make it a bit more dynamic and visually interesting without having to spend hours trying to make all of these assets from scratch. Everything in here is customizable, so you can change things like the fonts, the colors, the position of different elements, as well as pretty much everything else. I'm not gonna lie to you, at $109 it is pricey for sure, but it's a one-time payment and then you get to use it for pretty much any project in the future. Plus, when you consider how much is actually in here, the price kinda starts making sense. I'm fully aware that not everybody is gonna want to or be able to afford this, but if you are interested in picking it up, the people at Motion VFX were kind enough to give me a discount code to share with you. So you can use the code George10 at checkout to knock 10% off of that final total in your cart, on top of whatever other discounts are going on at the time. That being said, if you're someone who works on paid client projects and you need to do this type of stuff often, I really think that it can be a good investment, especially considering how much time it could potentially save you when you're editing. The next plugin I really like is also from Motion VFX, and it's called MHype. This one is a pack of some really cool titles that have some pretty nice looking modern animations, as well as a few motion graphics elements and motion backgrounds in there as well. Again, like with the stuff from MTutorial, you can pretty much customize anything about these, and depending on how you set things up, you can get a completely different look from every single one of the titles compared to what it was supposed to look like originally. You can enable and disable certain elements and move things around in whatever way you think looks good, and you can use these for pretty much anything like commercials, YouTube videos, social media content. It's up to you. Again, like with the previous one, at 89 bucks, it's not cheap, but just like with the MTutorial plugin, the quality of what you're getting is there. And again, if you're gonna be using this for paid client projects, investing into something that can save you time and make your workflow easier is definitely something to consider. Plus, if you end up deciding that you do want to get it, you can use my code for an extra 10% off. The next plugin I've been using a lot recently is called Beat Edit, and I'm not gonna spend way too much time on this one because I've already made a separate video about it on the channel. It's basically a tool that helps you visualize the tempo of a song by scanning it, detecting the beats per minute, and then automatically dropping markers on the timeline on each of the beats. Or it can create a metronome track and subtitles to match the beats of your song instead. It's super useful for when you want to match up titles or cuts or actions in your video with the beat of your music, or for example, if you want to make a song longer or shorter. Like I said, I already have a video about it on the channel that's a bit more in-depth, so you can go and check it out after this one. It costs $50, and for me personally, that's a fair price for what you're getting, but I know that some people will disagree with me, and honestly, like with pretty much all of the other paid plugins, that's gonna be a really subjective thing, and it's up to you to decide whether or not that's worth it. For the next few, we're gonna talk about some free plugins, and the first one is called MCamRig, and it's from Motion VFX again. This is essentially a tool that kind of lets you shift the perspective of your videos or your still images and almost kind of give them like a 3D look. And I personally really like using this for stuff like screen recordings whenever I'm making tutorials. Outside of the perspective and positioning controls, there's also some other cool effects that you can apply over the top of your footage. You drop it on an adjustment layer above whatever you want it to affect, set it up the way you like it, and then you're gonna get these smooth zoom in and out animations, and it's also going to shift the perspective and apply any of the other effects that you have checked. Or you could just use any of these separately if you want to go for a little bit more of a subtle effect. So for example, if you just want the RGB split effect to show up and then disappear, you can do that as well. It's a great way to make things that seem flat and boring a bit more dynamic, and like I said, it's completely free, so there's no reason not to pick it up and try it out. Next up are two plugins made by a fellow YouTube creator called MrAlexTech, and the first one is called Magic Zoom. It's an effect that you can drop on your footage or an adjustment layer, and it gives you this super simple and intuitive way to create smooth zoom animations. By default, it's a smooth zoom in and out, but you can also have it zoom in and hold there, or start zoomed in and then zoom out. Honestly, Alex has a video that's much more detailed about all of the stuff that you can do with this plugin, so I'll have that link below and you can go and check it out after this one. I personally use this plugin when I want to have simple zoom animations, and it's quicker to set up than the previous one from Motion VFX, and it's also easier on the playback as well. On the other hand, if I want some of the more fancy effects and perspective changes, I'll use MCamRig instead. The second plugin by MrAlexTech is called Magic Animate, and just like with the zoom one, you either drop it on your footage or an adjustment layer, and you get a bunch of controls for animations that you can use for stuff like text, still images, or even your footage. Again, Alex has a detailed overview video about how this entire plugin works and all of the cool stuff that you can do with it, so I'll link to that below, but you essentially have a bunch of different parameters that you can mix and match, and I personally use this plugin mainly for still images and logos and text, but you can use it for pretty much anything that you need it for. So both of these plugins are technically free, but you also have the option to donate whatever amount you want to Alex, so if you can afford it, I would encourage you to go and give him a couple of bucks to thank him for the effort of making these. Of course, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that you absolutely need all of these, because you can obviously make great videos even without them. When it comes to the paid plugins, it's really about deciding whether or not you're willing to invest the money into something that can potentially save you time. For some people, it's not gonna make sense, but for others, these could end up being really useful tools in the long run. That said, if you can't afford any of these, please don't feel pressured to spend any money that you don't have. And as far as the free ones go, those are still extremely useful, and you don't really lose anything by getting them, so feel free to try them out. Links for all of these are going to be in the description, and you can always find up-to-date links to all of the plugins and tools and assets that I use in the link tree that I have in all of my video descriptions. As always, thank you so much for watching until the end, because I genuinely appreciate it more than you know. Consider sticking around by subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.